My name is Samantha Reed, 36 years old, and I've always been the family disappointment. Behind my thrift store clothes and unassuming look hides a secret that would shatter their smug world. Tonight at my father's lavish birthday dinner in our Silicon Valley estate, my sister will hit me with her sharpest jab yet. "You smell like poverty." The whole table will erupt in laughter, my mother smirking as she adds, "Why is the loser even sitting here?" They'll clink glasses in celebration deliberately, leaving me out toasting to their perfect lives while I sit silent, the invisible outcast. Little do they know in that exact moment, the TV in the corner will flicker on with breaking news, a special segment revealing the mysterious billionaire behind the revolutionary AI healthcare empire that's transforming medicine worldwide. The glass will slip from my mother's hand, crashing to the floor as the anchor announces my name and face fills the screen. Oh my God, that's... What would you do when the whole world calls your name at the very moment your family treats you as invisible? Comment below and let's debate. I grew up in Silicon Valley, California, in a massive modern mansion with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the hills, a home theater, and a pool house bigger than most apartments. Relief washed over my parents when I enrolled at Stanford. They thought I'd conform, but during sophomore year I built a prototype algorithm that could analyze medical scans for early disease detection faster than existing tools. It hit me then, this could save lives, revolutionize healthcare. I presented it to professors who urged me to pursue it full-time. Halfway through junior year, I dropped out to launch my startup. The family's explosion was immediate. My father slammed his fist on the dining table during our confrontation. "You're throwing away everything we've given you for some fantasy app." My mother teared up, clutching her napkin. "Samantha, think about your future. Without a degree, you'll be nothing." Brittany crossed her arms, her voice dripping with superiority. "Some people aren't built for the real world. You'll crawl back begging for help." Justin shook his head. "Dad's right. This is suicide. Stick to the plan like we did." And I stood firm, explaining my vision for AI that could democratize medical care, but they waved it off. "Dreams don't pay rent," my father barked, then delivered the ultimatum. "If you walk out that door, you're on your own. No money, no support, nothing." I packed a single suitcase that night, my prototype code on a USB drive, and left with just $3,000 from part-time jobs. As I drove away, Brittany's final words echoed through a text message. "Good luck surviving without us. Don't embarrass the family name." That rejection burned deep. In the rearview mirror, the mansion shrank, but my resolve grew. I vowed not just to succeed, but to return when my empire dwarfed theirs, shattering their arrogance in one undeniable moment. The isolation began immediately. No calls, no checks-ins, just silence that fueled my fire. Over the next months, I reflected on how it all rooted in their narrow view of success. My father measured worth in property deeds and net worth statements. My mother prioritized appearances, hosting galas where status was currency. Brittany thrived on comparison, always positioning herself as the superior sibling. Justin followed blindly, never questioning the family script. My passion for AI healthcare threatened that order. It was unconventional, risky, without the prestige they craved. I remembered childhood dinners where they'd praise Brittany's awards or Justin's internships, while my science fair wins got polite nods. "That's cute, but focus on networking," my mother advised. One holiday, Brittany gifted me a book on finding your place in society, implying I hadn't. Justin laughed it off as a joke, but it stung. Those slights accumulated, turning love into resentment. Now alone in my new reality, I channeled that pain into action. I sketched business plans late at night, researched investors who valued innovation over pedigrees. The family's dismissal became my motivator. Every rejection email reminded me of their doubts. I promised myself one day they'd see what I built without them, and it would eclipse everything they valued. As winter turned to spring, I secured a cheap sublet in Seattle, ready to grind. The path ahead was brutal, but the roots of my suffering had planted seeds of unbreakable determination. Seattle greeted me with gray skies and a damp chill that seeped into my bones. My new home was a 300-square-foot studio in a rundown building near the edge of Capitol Hill with peeling paint and a radiator that groaned more than it heated. The rent ate half my $3,000, and the rest went to a second-hand laptop and enough instant noodles to survive a month. I had no furniture beyond a mattress on the floor, a folding chair, and a crate I used as a desk. Every night I coded my AI healthcare algorithm, refining its ability to detect diseases from medical scans with precision no hospital software could match. During the day I drove for Uber, navigating the city's hills in a beat-up sedan I'd bought for $800, its engine coughing like it resented every mile. The isolation was suffocating. For 3 years, not a single call or text came from my family. My father's ultimatum had been absolute: no money, no contact, no second chances. My mother, who once called to lecture me about proper paths, went silent. Brittany and Justin, who'd always been quick to mock, didn't bother checking if I was alive. The silence wasn't just rejection. It was erasure. I'd catch myself staring at my phone, hoping for a message, any sign they cared, but nothing came. That void became my fuel each empty day, sharpening my focus on the startup. 6 months and my savings were gone. I applied for public assistance to cover groceries, swallowing my pride as I stood in line at a food bank, clutching a reusable bag like a lifeline. The first time I used benefits to buy rice and canned beans, shame burned my cheeks, but I reminded myself this was temporary. My algorithm was improving now, catching early-stage cancers in test data with 95% accuracy. I pitched to investors, hauling my laptop to coffee shops for Wi-Fi, but most dismissed me, a 21-year-old dropout with no connections, no degree, just a bold idea. Come back when you have a prototype, they'd say, or worse, this isn't scalable. Stick to something practical. One night, exhausted after a 12-hour driving shift, I checked Instagram on a borrowed library computer. Brittany's latest post stopped me cold, a photo of her in a designer gown at a gala, smiling with Nicholas, caption reading, "So grateful I don't have toxic people dragging me down anymore." The comments were full of praise for her success, but I knew that caption was aimed at me. She'd cut me out of her life, branded me poison to justify her superiority. My brother Justin liked the post, adding a winking emoji as if my existence was a family joke. That moment snapped something inside me. This wasn't just about proving them wrong anymore, it was about making them choke on their own words. I doubled down. Revenge wasn't enough. It had to be undeniable, a shock so profound they'd question their entire worldview. I decided to build my empire in the shadows, invisible to them, until the perfect moment. I registered my startup under a generic name, Health Sync Solutions, avoiding any trace to Samantha Reed. No press, no LinkedIn, no public appearances. I used a pseudonym, S. Reed, for all business dealings, letting my code speak louder than my name. Days blurred into nights. I'd drive until 3 a.m., code until dawn, sleep for 4 hours, then start again. My diet was coffee and instant noodles, my body running on sheer will. I taught myself investor lingo, practice pitches in front of a cracked mirror, and cold emailed anyone who'd listen. Rejections piled up, over 100 in 6 months, but I kept refining. Every no echoed my family's doubts, pushing me harder. The turning point came in my second year in Seattle. At a tech meetup in a dingy bar, I met Angela Torres, a retired biotech executive who'd built her own company from nothing. She didn't care about my lack of a degree or polished pitch deck. She saw the demo, ran my algorithm on her own data, and nodded slowly. "This could change lives," she said. "But you need capital to scale." She invested $2 million, her faith in me the first validation I'd felt in years. That money bought servers, a small office, and a team of 3 coders who believed in the vision. With Angela's backing, HealthSync grew. Our AI started landing contracts with small clinics, proving its worth in real-world diagnostics. I kept my identity hidden, listing myself as a lead developer on paper, while Reed, the mysterious founder, communicated only through emails or voice-disguised calls. The secrecy wasn't just strategy, it was armor. If my family caught wind of my success, they'd try to claim credit or control. I wasn't ready for that yet. To stay one step ahead, I hired a private investigator, a discreet professional named Mark Collins, to keep tabs on my family without breaking any laws. His reports were clinical but revealing. My father's real estate empire was overleveraged, teetering on shaky loans. Brittany's practice thrived, but whispers of a botched procedure were starting to circulate among her elite clients. Justin's marriage was crumbling, his wife fed up with his obsession with the family legacy. These cracks in their perfect facade fueled my plan. I'd wait, build, and strike when their arrogance was at its peak. By year 3, HealthSync had contracts with regional hospitals, and our valuation hit $50 million. I still lived in that same studio, drove the same clunker, and wore clothes from discount racks. Not because I had to, but because I chose to. Every dollar went back into the company, every moment into perfecting the plan. I wasn't just building a business, I was crafting a reckoning. My family thought they'd erase me, but I was watching, waiting, ready to return when my success would hit them hardest. 5 years later, my empire was rising, but I stayed invisible. Health Sync Solutions, my AI healthcare startup, hit a valuation of $1 billion by its 5th year, a unicorn born from sleepless nights and relentless coding. Our algorithm now powered diagnostics in hospitals across 10 states, catching diseases from cancer to rare neurological disorders faster than any human doctor. Major health systems signed contracts and venture capital firms begged to invest, but I kept my identity locked away. On paper, I was just Samantha Reed, a mid-level developer. The founder, S. Reed, remained a ghost, emails signed with initials, conference calls with a modulated voice, and no photos anywhere. My private investigator, Mark Collins, sent monthly reports, each one a piece of the puzzle. My father's real estate empire was faltering, too many loans, too few buyers in a cooling market. He'd started cutting corners, delaying projects, and losing key partners. Brittany's plastic surgery practice still thrived, but a recent patient complaint about a botched procedure had sparked whispers on elite message boards. Justin's divorce was finalized, his ex-wife citing his obsession with the family business as the breaking point. He was drinking more, showing up late to meetings, his polished image cracking. These weaknesses weren't just data points, they were leverage for the reckoning I'd planned. I'd always known the reveal had to be perfect, a moment that would dismantle their smug superiority in one blow. Last month, CNN reached out for a feature on HealthSync's impact on global healthcare. After years of anonymity, my board pushed for a public reveal to boost our upcoming consumer app and AI tool for personal health monitoring. I agreed, but with a twist. I timed the broadcast for my father's 60th birthday dinner, a lavish event my mother was hosting at their Silicon Valley mansion. The coincidence felt like fate, but I'd make sure it hit like a thunderbolt. To set the trap, I had my assistant send an invitation to my family from HealthSync Solutions, proposing a potential partnership with my father's firm. The letter was vague but enticing, hinting at a revolutionary AI company seeking real estate for a new headquarters. I knew my father, desperate for a win, would take the bait, and Brittany would see it as a chance to network with tech elites. Justin would tag along, always eager to play the loyal son. The invitation mentioned a CNN segment airing soon, planting a seed of curiosity without revealing my role. Mark's latest report confirmed they'd discussed the letter at a family meeting. My father bragged about landing a big fish, while Brittany speculated about meeting the mysterious founder. They had no idea I was behind it, no clue I'd orchestrated the moment to expose their decade of disdain. The irony was delicious. They were chasing a deal with the daughter they'd written off. As the dinner approached, I prepared meticulously. My team coordinated with CNN to ensure the segment aired at 8 p.m. sharp, right in the middle of the evening. I'd arranged for a smart TV in my parents' dining room to accidentally tune to the channel, a subtle hack my lead engineer embedded in their system during a routine service call they'd never suspect. It was psychological warfare designed to maximize shock when my face appeared on screen. I stood in front of my cracked mirror, choosing my outfit with care. A worn gray hoodie, faded jeans, and scuffed flats, exactly the image my family expected, the failure they'd mocked for years. I pulled my hair into a messy bun, skipped makeup, and checked my reflection. I looked like someone who'd never left that Seattle studio, not a billionaire running a global company. Perfect. The contrast would make the reveal hit harder. My phone buzzed with a text from Angela Torres, my first investor. "You sure about this? It's a big swing." I typed back, "I've waited 10 years. They won't see it coming." She replied with a thumbs-up emoji, her way of saying she trusted my judgment. Angela had seen me at my lowest, coding on a borrowed laptop, and now she'd watch me reclaim my power. I climbed into my rattling sedan, the engine protesting as I started the 3-hour drive from Seattle to Silicon Valley. Memories flickered, childhood drives to that same mansion, my father lecturing me about real success, Brittany's snide comments at holiday dinners, Justin's dismissive smirks. Each mile stoked the fire I'd carried since the day I left. I wasn't just going to a birthday party, I was walking into a battlefield. Mark's final update came as I hit the highway. My father had invited local business tycoons to the dinner, hoping to impress them with the HealthSync deal. Brittany had bragged on social media about major opportunities on the horizon. Justin was reportedly stressed, downing whiskey to cope with his divorce fallout. Their vulnerabilities were aligning, and I was ready to exploit them. I parked my car at a gas station 10 minutes from the house, checking my phone one last time. My publicist confirmed the CNN segment was locked in, with a live feed of my interview from our Seattle office taped last week. I'd spoken openly about building HealthSync from nothing, my dropout story, and why I'd stayed anonymous. In tech, being underestimated is an edge, I'd told the anchor. It lets your work speak first. The segment would reveal my net worth, estimated at $4 billion, and name me as the sole founder. As I pulled back onto the road, my heart pounded, not with fear but anticipation. The trap was set, the pieces in place. Tonight they'd face the truth, and I'd watch their world tilt. The drive to my parents' estate felt like a countdown. Their Silicon Valley mansion loomed ahead, its sleek glass facade reflecting the golden dusk, a monument to wealth and control. 3 luxury cars, a Bentley, a Porsche, and a Mercedes, lined the circular driveway, dwarfing my rattling sedan. I parked behind them, the contrast stark, almost laughable. Clutching a modest gift bag with a bottle of mid-range wine, I stepped out, my faded hoodie and scuffed jeans blending into the image they'd always expected, Samantha the failure. The front door opened before I could knock. Anthony, the family's longtime butler, greeted me with a warm nod. "Miss Samantha, good to see you." His tone held a kindness my family never offered, his eyes flickering with something like respect. "They're in the dining room," he added, taking the wine with a glance that suggested he knew its understated value. I thanked him and walked toward the murmur of voices, my heart steady but my nerves electric. The dining room was a showcase of opulence, a long ebony table set for 12 crystal chandeliers casting soft light on fine china and polished silver. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed manicured gardens, and a smart TV hung discreetly on one wall, its screen dark for now. My family sat in their usual hierarchy, my father at the head, my mother beside him, Brittany and Nicholas near them, Justin across, and a few relatives filling the rest. Aunt Victoria and her daughter Abigail, my cousin, chatted lightly, their designer dresses catching the light. Brittany spotted me first. "Oh, look who made it," she said, her voice sweet but sharp, her eyes scanning my outfit with a smirk. "Still shopping at thrift stores?" Samantha laughter rippled around the table, my mother's smile tight but amused. I forced a neutral nod, taking my seat at the far end next to Abigail, who offered a polite but distant greeting. My father barely glanced up, his focus on a conversation with Nicholas about real estate markets. The servers, led by Anthony, poured wine as my mother raised her glass. "To Daniel's 60th, a legacy of success," she said, her voice polished. Everyone clinked glasses, but no one passed me one. The exclusion was deliberate, a silent reminder of my place or lack thereof. I sipped water, my expression calm though my pulse thrummed with anticipation. The TV was still off, but I knew its moment was coming. Conversation flowed predictably. Brittany boasted about her latest celebrity client, her practice thriving despite the whispers I'd read about. Justin bragged about a new office park deal, his confidence brittle after his divorce. My father nodded approvingly, tossing in comments about his firm's resilience. Then Brittany turned to me, her smile venomous. "Samantha, you're awfully quiet. Still driving that junker? You smell like poverty in that hoodie." The table erupted in laughter, louder this time, my mother joining in with a chuckle. "Honestly, darling," she added, leaning forward, "why is the loser even sitting here?" Their words stung, but I stayed silent, my face a mask. The clinking of glasses resumed, a toast to their perfect lives, deliberately excluding me again. I was invisible, just as they'd always wanted. My eyes flicked to the TV, its remote tucked under a napkin where I'd slipped it earlier thanks to my engineer's hack. Any second now. As the first course, seared scallops with truffle oil, arrived, the TV flickered to life. No one noticed at first, the chatter drowning out the soft hum. Then the CNN logo flashed, and a breaking news, Chiron scrolled, "Meet the billionaire behind HealthSync Solutions." My face appeared on screen, professional and composed from the interview I'd taped last week. The anchor's voice cut through the room. Samantha Reed, the mysterious founder of the AI healthcare giant valued at $10 billion, has revolutionized medical diagnostics. A glass slipped from my mother's hand, shattering on the hardwood floor. My father froze mid-sentence, his face draining of color. Brittany's jaw dropped, her wine glass trembling. Nicholas stared, his usual smugness gone. Justin's eyes darted between the screen and me, confusion overtaking his bravado. The relatives gasped, Abigail whispering, "Is that her?" The anchor continued, detailing my journey from dropout to billionaire, my $4 billion net worth, and HealthSync's global impact. I stood slowly, my voice steady but cold. "The mystery AI company you were so eager to partner with," I said, locking eyes with my father. "That's me. HealthSync Solutions is mine." The invitation was a test. I turned to Brittany, her face now pale. "You failed. All of you did." My mother swayed, clutching the table, her breath shallow enough that Anthony rushed to her side, murmuring about calling a doctor. My father's mouth opened, but no words came. Brittany stammered, This can't be real." "It's real," I said, stepping forward, my worn sneakers silent on the polished floor. 10 years ago, you called me a disappointment, a nobody. You cut me off, mocked me, erased me. Tonight, you laughed while toasting my exclusion. I pointed to the TV where my interview played on, discussing how I'd built HealthSync from nothing. "That's who I am, not the loser you invented." The room was a frozen tableau. Aunt Victoria's hand covered her mouth, Abigail's eyes wide with shock. Nicholas looked like he'd been slapped, his venture capitalist mind recalculating my worth. Justin rubbed his temples, muttering under his breath. My mother's face crumpled, her composure shattered, while my father's hands shook, the weight of his misjudgments sinking in. I picked up my gift bag untouched by the servers and turned to Anthony. "Thank you for always being kind," I said softly. He nodded, a faint smile breaking through his professional mask. To the table, I added, "You wanted me gone unless I was somebody. Well, I'm somebody now. But you don't get to share in it." I walked toward the door, their silence deafening, my plan executed perfectly. 3 luxury cars, a Bentley, a Porsche, and a Mercedes lined the circular driveway, dwarfing my rattling sedan. I parked behind them, the contrast stark, almost laughable. Clutching a modest gift bag with a bottle of mid-range wine, I stepped out, my faded hoodie and scuffed jeans blending into the image they'd always expected, Samantha the failure. The front door opened before I could knock. Anthony, the family's longtime butler, greeted me with a warm nod. "Miss Samantha, good to see you." His tone held a kindness my family never offered, his eyes flickering with something like respect. "They're in the dining room," he added, taking the wine with a glance that suggested he knew its understated value. I thanked him and walked toward the murmur of voices, my heart steady but my nerves electric. The dining room was a showcase of opulence, a long ebony table set for 12 crystal chandeliers, casting soft light on fine china and polished silver. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed manicured gardens, and a smart TV hung discreetly on one wall, its screen dark for now. My family sat in their usual hierarchy, my father at the head, my mother beside him, Brittany and Nicholas near them, Justin across, and a few relatives filling the rest. Aunt Victoria and her daughter Abigail, my cousin, chatted lightly, their designer dresses catching the light. Brittany spotted me first. "Oh, look who made it," she said, her voice sweet but sharp, her eyes scanning my outfit with a smirk. "Still shopping at thrift stores?" Samantha laughter rippled around the table, my mother's smile tight but amused. I forced a neutral nod, taking my seat at the far end next to Abigail, who offered a polite but distant greeting. My father barely glanced up, his focus on a conversation with Nicholas about real estate markets. The servers, led by Anthony, poured wine as my mother raised her glass. "To Daniel's 60th, a legacy of success," she said, her voice polished. Everyone clinked glasses, but no one passed me one. The exclusion was deliberate, a silent reminder of my place or lack thereof. I sipped water, my expression calm, though my pulse thrummed with anticipation. The TV was still off, but I knew its moment was coming. Conversation flowed predictably. Brittany boasted about her latest celebrity client, her practice thriving despite the whispers I'd read about. Justin bragged about a new office park deal, his confidence brittle after his divorce. My father nodded approvingly, tossing in comments about his firm's resilience. Then Brittany turned to me, her smile venomous. "Samantha, you're awfully quiet. Still driving that junker. You smell like poverty in that hoodie." The table erupted in laughter, louder this time, my mother joining in with a chuckle. "Honestly, darling," she added, leaning forward, "why is the loser even sitting here?" Their words stung, but I stayed silent, my face a mask. The clinking of glasses resumed, a toast to their perfect lives, deliberately excluding me again. I was invisible, just as they'd always wanted. My eyes flicked to the TV, its remote tucked under a napkin where I'd slipped it earlier thanks to my engineer's hack. Any second now. As the first course, seared scallops with truffle oil, arrived, the TV flickered to life. No one noticed at first, the chatter drowning out the soft hum. Then the CNN logo flashed and a breaking news chyron scrolled, "Meet the billionaire behind HealthSync Solutions." My face appeared on screen, professional, and composed from the interview I'd taped last week. The anchor's voice cut through the room. Samantha Reed, the mysterious founder of the AI healthcare giant valued at $10 billion, has revolutionized medical diagnostics. A glass slipped from my mother's hand, shattering on the hardwood floor. My father froze mid-sentence, his face draining of color. Brittany's jaw dropped, her wine glass trembling. Nicholas stared, his usual smugness gone. Justin's eyes darted between the screen and me, confusion overtaking his bravado. The relatives gasped, Abigail whispering, "Is that her?" The anchor continued, detailing my journey from dropout to billionaire, my $4 billion net worth, and HealthSync's global impact. I stood slowly, my voice steady but cold. "The mystery AI company you were so eager to partner with," I said, locking eyes with my father. "That's me. HealthSync Solutions is mine." The invitation was a test. I turned to Brittany, her face now pale. "You failed. All of you did." My mother swayed, clutching the table, her breath shallow enough that Anthony rushed to her side, murmuring about calling a doctor. My father's mouth opened, but no words came. Brittany stammered, This can't be real." It's real, I said, stepping forward, my worn sneakers silent on the polished floor. 10 years ago, you called me a disappointment, a nobody. You cut me off, mocked me, erased me. Tonight, you laughed while toasting my exclusion. I pointed to the TV where my interview played on, discussing how I'd built HealthSync from nothing. That's who I am, not the loser you invented. The room was a frozen tableau. Aunt Victoria's hand covered her mouth, Abigail's eyes wide with shock. Nicholas looked like he'd been slapped, his venture capitalist mind recalculating my worth. Justin rubbed his temples, muttering under his breath. My mother's face crumpled, her composure shattered, while my father's hand shook, the weight of his misjudgment sinking in. I picked up my gift bag untouched by the servers and turned to Anthony. Thank you for always being kind, I said softly. He nodded, a faint smile breaking through his professional mask. To the table, I added, you wanted me gone, unless I was somebody. Well, I'm somebody now. But you don't get to share in it. I walked toward the door, their silence deafening, my plan executed perfectly. Their stunned faces burned into my memory. The dining room, moments ago alive with laughter and clinking glasses, was now a graveyard of shock. The CNN segment looped on the TV, my face still filling the screen, the anchor recounting HealthSync's $10 billion valuation and my $4 billion net worth. My mother, Lauren, slumped in her chair, her breathing shallow, a server hovering nearby with a glass of water. My father, Daniel, gripped the table's edge, his knuckles white, his authoritative demeanor crumbling. Brittany's makeup couldn't hide her pallor, her eyes darting between me and the screen as if expecting a prank. Justin rubbed his face, muttering incoherently, while Nicholas stared at the floor, his venture capitalist confidence shattered. Aunt Victoria and Abigail sat frozen, their forks suspended midair. Brittany broke the silence first, her voice trembling. Samantha, this isn't real, right? You're joking. Her laugh was forced, desperate. You can't be that person. She gestured at the TV where I discussed AI's role in saving lives. I leaned forward, my voice calm but cutting. It's real, Brittany. I built HealthSync from nothing. While you laughed, called me a failure, I was changing the world. My mother's head snapped up, her composure fracturing. Samantha, how could you hide this from us? We're your family. Her tone carried hurt, but it was laced with something else. Embarrassment, maybe that her social circle would soon know she'd misjudged her own daughter. I met her gaze. Family. You erased me 10 years ago when I chose my own path. You didn't call, didn't care, didn't ask if I was starving. Where was family then? My father cleared his throat, trying to regain control. Samantha. We made mistakes, but I taught you discipline, business sense. You got that from me. His attempt to claim credit was so predictable it almost made me laugh. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to a text he'd sent years ago, one I'd saved for this moment. Let me read something, I said. My voice steady. Samantha, you're a disgrace to the Reed name. Don't expect a dime from us. That was you, Dad, when I left for Seattle. Discipline. You taught me abandonment. He flinched, his face reddening. Brittany jumped in, her voice rising. I was just joking tonight. We've always been hard on you because we cared. Her words were frantic, her perfect image unraveling. I scrolled to another message, this one from her, sent after her Instagram post. Good riddance, Samantha. Stay out of our lives. Joking, Brittany, you called me toxic, a disappointment in front of your friends, your followers, everyone. Justin shifted uncomfortably, his voice low. Samantha, I didn't mean to hurt you. I was following their lead. His eyes met mine, pleading, the closest to sincerity I'd ever seen from him. I shook my head. Too late, Justin. You liked her post, laughed at her jabs, never once checked on me. 3 years of silence, and you think one apology fixes that. Nicholas, ever the pragmatist, tried to pivot. This is incredible, Samantha. We should discuss potential synergies with HealthSync. My firm, could I cut him off? No, Nicholas. You don't get to ride this wave. You sat there while they mocked me, toasting to my exclusion. This isn't a business opportunity for you. Aunt Victoria, usually silent, spoke up. Samantha, we didn't know. You could have told us. Her tone was softer, but it missed the point. Why should I have to prove my worth to be treated like a person? I asked. You all judged me by my clothes, my car, my choices without ever asking what I was building or why. Abigail nodded slightly, her eyes wide, but said nothing. I stood taller, my voice growing colder. For 10 years you mocked me, erased me, made me the family punchline. Tonight you laughed while calling me a loser, toasting my failure, but I'm done letting you define me. I pulled up one final message from my mother, sent after I'd missed a holiday dinner to work. Samantha, your absence is a relief. You'd only embarrass us. That was you, Mom, 2 years ago. Relief. Tonight you got your wish. I was invisible until the truth hit. My mother's eyes welled up, but I felt no pity. Their tears, their excuses were too late. I set my phone down, its screen glowing with their words, a digital record of their cruelty. You have 48 hours, I said, my voice like steel. Post a public apology for 10 years of abuse on your social media, your business pages, wherever your precious circles will see it. Name every time you called me a failure, and nobody. If you don't, I'll make sure every contact, every client, every friend knows exactly who you are. Health sync has reached you can't imagine. Brittany gasped, her hand clutching her necklace. You wouldn't dare. That's blackmail. I smiled thinly. It's accountability. You built your lives on appearances. Let's see how they hold up when the truth comes out. My father's jaw tightened, but he said nothing, his empire's cracks already exposed. Justin tried again, his voice breaking. Samantha, please. I'm sorry. Let's talk, just us. I looked at him, the brother who'd once been my closest ally before choosing their side. You had 10 years to talk, Justin. You chose silence. I turned to the room, their faces a mix of shock, guilt, and desperation. You wanted me gone unless I was somebody. I'm somebody now, and you're nothing to me. I walked to the door, my steps deliberate, the weight of their silence heavier than their laughter had ever been. Anthony opened it for me, his nod subtle but proud. I didn't look back. The TV still played, my voice echoing through the room, detailing HealthSync's mission to save lives. Their world was collapsing, and I'd lit the fuse. 1 year later, their world had unraveled. The fallout from that dinner rippled through my family's carefully curated lives, exposing their fragility in ways they never anticipated. Brittany's plastic surgery practice collapsed under the weight of her own arrogance. A leaked audio clip captured by a guest's phone during the dinner spread across social media, her "you smell like poverty" taunt replayed thousands of times. Clients fled, unwilling to trust a surgeon who mocked her own sister so cruelly. By spring, she'd lost 70% of her business, forcing her to shutter her Beverly Hills office and take a job as a contract doctor at a low-tier clinic, her reputation in tatters. My mother, Lauren, once the queen of Silicon Valley's elite circles, became a pariah. The country clubs and charity boards she dominated dropped her invitations, whispers of her loser comment following her like a shadow. She withdrew into their mansion, her social calendar empty, her health deteriorating under the stress of public shame. Doctors prescribed medication for anxiety, but no pill could restore her status. She sent me a single letter, handwritten, pleading for forgiveness, but I left it unopened, its words irrelevant after a decade of silence. My father, Daniel, faced the harshest blow. His real estate empire, already weakened by bad loans, crumbled when key partners pulled out, spooked by the scandal's fallout and rumors of his family's dysfunction. HealthSync's board, under my direction, rejected his firm's bid for a new headquarters deal, a deliberate snub that cost him millions. By summer, he'd sold the Silicon Valley mansion to cover debts, moving to a modest condo, a humiliation for a man who'd built his identity on wealth. Justin, no longer the golden son, struggled to salvage the family firm, but lacked the connections to recover it. Meanwhile, HealthSync soared. Our AI diagnostics expanded to 15 countries, powering hospitals in Europe and Asia, with a valuation climbing to $10 billion. I relocated to new headquarters in Seattle, a sleek glass building overlooking Puget Sound, but kept my personal life simple, a small apartment, my old sedan clothes that didn't scream wealth. The money wasn't the point, the mission was. Our consumer app launched successfully, helping millions monitor their health, affordably fulfilling the vision I'd had at Stanford. I poured my energy into a new venture, the Second Chances Foundation, funded with $200 million of my own wealth. It supported survivors of toxic families, people like me rejected for choosing their own paths. We offered grants for entrepreneurs, therapy for emotional scars, and networks to replace the families they'd lost. Applications flooded in, each story a reminder of why I'd fought so hard. Mentoring these founders, watching them build without fear, gave me a purpose deeper than any revenge. One gray morning, as I reviewed grant proposals in my office, my assistant buzzed. "There's a man here to see you. Says he's your father." My stomach tightened, but I nodded. Daniel walked in, his tailored suits replaced by a worn jacket, his face lined with defeat. "Samantha," he said, his voice hoarse, "I'm sorry. For everything. I'm applying for a security job at your building. Please." His eyes begged for a lifeline, a chance to reclaim some dignity. I studied him, the man who'd called me a disgrace, who'd cut me off without a second thought. "You taught me one thing," I said, my tone even. "Choices have consequences. You made yours when you erased me. I slid the job application back across the desk. We're not hiring. He stood shoulders slumped and left without another word. The door closed and I felt no triumph, only closure. Justin tried reaching out too through emails and voicemails, each one more desperate. I was wrong, Samantha. Let's rebuild. I deleted them without replying. Brittany's public apology never came, her pride wouldn't allow it. Instead, she posted a vague Instagram story about family misunderstandings which only fueled more backlash. My mother's letter remained unopened, a relic of a past I'd outgrown. Reflecting on that night, I realized revenge didn't bring happiness. It was satisfying, yes, to watch their smugness collapse, to see their empire crack under the weight of their own cruelty, but justice, not vengeance, set me free. Justice was building Helsinki despite their doubts, creating a legacy that saved lives, not egos. Justice was choosing who deserved my time, my trust, my heart. In America, family is supposed to be unbreakable, but mine proved that's a myth. Their judgment, calling me a loser, a nobody, came from their narrow view of success. Wealth displayed, status flaunted. I defined success differently: impact, purpose, resilience. Their punishment wasn't my doing. It was the natural consequence of their choices played out in a society obsessed with reputation. Brittany's clients left because trust matters in medicine. My mother's isolation came because elite circles shunned scandal. My father's collapse was inevitable in a market that values stability over bravado. I stood at my office window, Seattle's skyline stretching before me. The struggling dropout who'd coded on a borrowed laptop felt like another life, but her fire still burned in me. The Second Chances Foundation was my answer to that girl, to others like her, proving you don't need family approval to thrive. I'd cut them off not out of spite, but because I deserved better. My phone buzzed, a notification about a new HealthSync contract in Japan. Tomorrow would bring more work, more lives to touch, more chances to build. The dinner, the reveal, the fallout, they were history now. My family's voices no longer echoed in my head. I was free, not because I'd won, but because I'd chosen myself. If you've ever been underestimated, told your dreams were worthless, share your story below. How did you prove them wrong? Let's inspire each other. The sweetest justice isn't revenge, it's living your truth unapologetically, while those who doubted you fade into irrelevance.
I don't know what your father saw in you sometimes, Helen muttered, her voice cutting through the quiet kitchen like a knife. You can't even manage to clean up after yourself. I froze, the coffee cup in my hand hovering mid-air. The dishes in the sink weren't mine. I hadn't even eaten breakfast yet, but I swallowed the retort bubbling in my throat. Confrontation with Helen never ended well. My name is Julia, and I'm 25 years old. 6 months ago, my dad passed away unexpectedly, leaving me as the sole inheritor of everything he worked so hard for. I've been staying with Helen, his wife of 10 years, because, well, it seemed like the right thing to do. My dad adored her, and I wanted to keep some part of him alive. I'm an only child, and with my mom gone since I was 12, I thought we could grieve together. But Helen didn't want a grieving partner. She wanted control. At first, I chalked up her harsh comments to stress. Losing my dad had been hard on both of us. She had welcomed me into her home after the funeral, insisting it was what he would have wanted. But as the weeks turned into months, her true colors began to show. Little remarks about how I dressed, how I spent my time, even the books I read, became an almost daily occurrence. Your dad always thought you wasted too much time daydreaming, she'd say with a smirk. Or, no wonder you don't have a boyfriend. Who would want someone so disorganized? It wasn't just words, though. Small things started happening around the house. My favorite mug suddenly disappeared, only to show up later, shattered in the trash. The thermostat would be turned down to freezing, and Helen would claim she hadn't touched it. But I told myself it wasn't worth making a fuss. Helen had been my dad's wife for a decade. If he had loved her, there had to be good in her somewhere. Right? That morning, as Helen slammed a cabinet closed, muttering something under her breath, I started to wonder if I was wrong. The tension grew heavier as the day wore on. Helen seemed more agitated than usual, pacing the house and snapping at me over trivial things. I overheard her on the phone later, her voice low and clipped. I told you, we'll talk when she's gone, she hissed, before slamming the door to her room. My chest tightened. Was she talking about me? I shook off the thought, telling myself I was imagining things, but the unease lingered, a small voice in the back of my mind whispering that something wasn't right. Growing up, I was always the quiet one. After my mom passed away, my dad and I became a team, just the two of us against the world. He worked long hours to make sure I never went without, and I did my best to make him proud. I threw myself into my studies, stayed out of trouble, and never gave him a reason to worry. When he met Helen, I was 15. She seemed kind at first, always wearing a warm smile and laughing at my dad's jokes. It wasn't easy seeing him with someone new, but I wanted him to be happy. She brought a lightness to his life that he hadn't had since losing my mom, and that was enough for me. But things changed once they got married. Helen moved into our home, and I started noticing her subtle jabs, always cloaked in sweetness. "Oh, Julia, you're so smart, but don't you think you should try harder to make friends?" Or, "Your dad tells me you're very independent, but everyone needs a little polish." I let her comments roll off my back, thinking they didn't matter. Now, sitting in the house that was supposed to be my refuge, her words felt like knives. Everything my dad had worked for, this house, his investments, his business, was left to me after his death. It wasn't because he didn't care for Helen, he just wanted me to have security. He trusted her to be fair, to continue to love me as her own. I wanted to honor that trust, but Helen didn't seem to share the sentiment. Even before I moved in, she made it clear she wasn't happy with the arrangement. "It'll be an adjustment for both of us," she'd said with a tight smile. "But I know it's what your father would have wanted." Living here had been anything but an adjustment. It felt like a constant test. Helen controlled everything, the bills, the meals, even how the furniture was arranged. I offered to help, but my suggestions were always brushed aside. "You wouldn't understand the responsibilities of running a household," she'd say, her tone dripping with condescension. Still, I stayed, hoping things would get better. I told myself Helen was just grieving, that she was trying to cope in her own way. I ignored the late-night phone calls, the sharp remarks, the way she looked at me like I was a guest overstaying my welcome. But now, with my father gone, the family I had left seemed to be slipping further away. I was trying to hold on to the pieces, but it felt like Helen was intent on shattering them. The uneasy feeling from earlier returned. Helen's whispered phone call played in my mind like a broken record. "We'll talk when she's gone." Gone where? It started as a small suspicion, like a splinter lodged in my thoughts. Helen had always been sharp-tongued and controlling, but her recent behavior felt different, more deliberate, more sinister. The cryptic phone call I overheard earlier replayed in my mind as I sat at the dining table, pushing my dinner around my plate. "You're quiet tonight," Helen said, her voice unnervingly cheerful. She watched me closely, a smile that didn't reach her eyes plastered across her face. "Just tired," I mumbled, forcing a weak smile in return. Her gaze lingered for a moment longer before she turned her attention to her glass of wine. "Well, make sure you get plenty of rest. You've looked unwell lately." The comment hit me harder than it should have. She wasn't wrong. I had felt off these past few weeks. Fatigue, nausea, headaches. I had brushed it off as stress, but the timing nagged at me. The first symptoms had started not long after I moved in. That night, unable to shake the gnawing unease, I decided to check Helen's room. She had left for a late-night errand, so I had some time. I didn't like the idea of snooping, but something inside me screamed that I had to know. I started with her desk. Papers were neatly stacked, her handwriting meticulous. Bills, receipts, a few personal letters, nothing out of the ordinary. But then I noticed her laptop, left unlocked. Curiosity got the better of me. I opened her email and immediately felt my stomach drop. One email thread stood out, a conversation with someone named Paul. The subject line read, "Next steps." I clicked it, my hands trembling. "Paul. She's still there? I thought you'd have handled this by now." "Helen, I told you, These things take time. Stop rushing me. It has to be seamless. Paul. We don't have time for seamless. The clock's ticking. Do what needs to be done. My blood ran cold. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. Who was Paul? What were they planning? I kept scrolling, my breath hitching with every new message. The correspondence grew more explicit. References to the money, the estate, and chillingly, her out of the way. A wave of nausea hit me and I clutched the edge of the desk to steady myself. This wasn't just paranoia anymore. Helen and Paul were plotting against me. I shut the laptop and left her room, my mind racing. Every comment, every strange behavior suddenly clicked into place. Helen didn't just resent me, she wanted me gone. But I wasn't going anywhere. I went back to my room, locking the door behind me. As I stared at the faint glow of my phone, I knew what I had to do. Helen thought she was in control, but she underestimated me. This wasn't just her house. This was my life, and I was going to fight for it. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of clinking dishes downstairs. Helen was already up, humming an off-key tune as she moved around the kitchen. My stomach churned, not from hunger, but from the weight of what I'd uncovered the night before. I couldn't act impulsively. Whatever Helen and Paul were planning, they had already started putting it into motion. If I tipped my hand too soon, I might lose the chance to stop them. I sat on my bed scrolling through my phone. The emails I'd read were etched into my mind, but they weren't enough. I needed tangible proof, something undeniable to take to the authorities. Breakfast was tense. Helen served eggs and toast with her usual forced cheer. "You've got a busy day ahead, don't you?" she asked, watching me intently. I nodded, avoiding her gaze. My appetite was gone, but I forced myself to take a few bites. Helen seemed pleased, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth as she sipped her coffee. After breakfast, I made an excuse to leave the house. "I'm meeting Lila for coffee," I told Helen, grabbing my coat. Her expression faltered for a split second, her grip tightening on her mug. "Of course. Tell her I said hello." The moment I was out of the house, I called Lila. "Julia, what's wrong?" she asked immediately, sensing the panic in my voice. "I need to see you," I said, my voice trembling. "It's about Helen. I think she's trying to—" I couldn't finish the sentence. The words felt too surreal. "Trying to what?" Lila pressed. "Just meet me at the coffee shop," I said. When I arrived, Lila was already waiting at a corner table, her brow furrowed with concern. I sat down and recounted everything, the emails, Helen's comments, my symptoms. Lila's face darkened as I spoke. "This is serious, Julia," she said. "You need to go to the police." "I will," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "But I need more proof. If I walk in with just suspicions, they might not take me seriously." Lila nodded. "Then we'll get proof, whatever it takes." Her words gave me a sense of reassurance I hadn't felt in weeks. I didn't feel completely alone. We spent the next hour planning. Lila suggested installing a small camera in the kitchen to monitor Helen's movements and recording any conversations we overheard. It felt invasive, but desperate times called for desperate measures. As I walked back home, my nerves were raw, but my resolve was stronger than ever. Helen might have thought she had the upper hand, but she underestimated me. The house felt colder when I returned. Helen was sitting in the living room, pretending to read a magazine, but her eyes flicked up as soon as I walked in. "Coffee with Lila was nice?" she asked, her voice syrupy sweet. "Yes," I said simply, heading toward my room before she could press further. My heart was pounding, but I couldn't let her see even a hint of fear. Once inside, I locked the door and pulled out the tiny camera Lila had given me. Installing it in the kitchen wasn't going to be easy, but it was necessary. Helen had to slip up eventually, and when she did, I'd be ready. That night, I waited until I was sure Helen was asleep. The house was eerily quiet as I crept downstairs, my footsteps muffled by the rug. In the kitchen, I found a spot behind a row of decorative jars where the camera would be hidden but still have a clear view of the room. The next few days were tense. I went about my usual routine, forcing myself to act as though nothing had changed, while the camera silently recorded everything. Helen's behavior grew increasingly erratic. She snapped at me for minor things, leaving a light on, forgetting to close a cupboard, and her phone calls became more frequent, her voice sharp and hushed. One afternoon, I decided to check the footage. I locked my door, plugged the camera into my laptop, and played the recordings. At first, there was nothing unusual, just Helen making tea or tidying up. But then, on the third night, I saw it. Helen stood at the kitchen counter, carefully pouring a white powder into a small jar labeled sugar. She paused, glancing toward the doorway as if expecting someone to catch her, before putting the jar back in its place. My stomach twisted. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. This was real. I called Lila immediately. "I have proof," I whispered, my voice shaking. "What did you find?" "I think she's been tampering with the food. I caught her on camera putting something in the sugar jar." Lila's silence on the other end was heavy. Finally, she said, "Julia, you can't stay there. Not another night. Come to my place." I hesitated, glancing at the closed door of my room. "I can't just leave. If I disappear, she'll know I'm on to her." "Then what's the plan?" Lila asked. I took a deep breath, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. "I'm going to gather everything I can, emails, recordings, everything, and then I'll go to the police. But I need more time." "Be careful," Lila said firmly. "Promise me." "I will," I said, though the knot in my stomach told me this was far from over. The next morning, I woke up to find Helen in an unusually good mood. She was humming to herself in the kitchen, the same tune I'd heard the day before, and even offered me breakfast with a smile. "You've been looking so tired lately," she said, placing a plate of scrambled eggs in front of me. "I made this just for you. You need your strength." The smell of the food turned my stomach. I glanced at the sugar jar on the counter, then back at the plate. My pulse quickened, but I kept my face neutral. "Thanks," I muttered, forcing a small smile. I pretended to take a bite, carefully shoving the eggs around the plate while Helen watched me from the corner of her eye. As soon as she left the room, I grabbed a plastic bag from the pantry and scraped the eggs into it. Whatever she'd done, I wasn't going to risk it. I tucked the bag into my purse, planning to have it tested later. That afternoon, I reviewed the footage again. This time, I found something even more chilling. Helen was on the phone with Paul, pacing the kitchen as she spoke. "She's still here," Helen hissed, her voice sharp with frustration. "I've done everything I can to make her uncomfortable, but she won't leave." Paul's voice was faint but clear. "Then you need to stop wasting time. The lawyer can't hold off forever, and the longer she's alive, the more complicated this gets." My breath caught. The longer she's alive. It was no longer a question of if Helen was trying to harm me. It was a question of when. I spent the rest of the day gathering every piece of evidence I could. The video footage, the emails, and now the tampered food, all of it pointed to a clear and deliberate plan to get rid of me. That evening, I called Lila again. "I have enough," I said, my voice trembling. "I'm going to the police tomorrow." "Good," she said firmly. "And you're staying with me tonight. No arguments." I agreed, packing a small bag with essentials and the evidence I had collected. I told Helen I was heading to Lila's for a girls' night, masking my unease with casual indifference. She didn't question it, her focus seemingly elsewhere. But as I left the house, her parting words sent a shiver down my spine. "Enjoy your night, Julia," she said, her tone light but her eyes cold. "You never know when it might be your last." That night at Lila's felt like the first breath of fresh air in weeks. Her cozy apartment, filled with the smell of lavender and the sound of soft music, was a stark contrast to Helen's tense, cold house. "You're safe here," Lila said as she handed me a cup of tea. "We'll get through this." I nodded, clutching the mug like it was a lifeline. I hope the police take me seriously, I said. What if they think I'm being paranoid? You're not, Lila said firmly. You've done everything right. You have evidence, more than enough to make them act. The next morning we went to the police station. My heart pounded as I handed over the evidence. The emails, the video footage, and the bag of scrambled eggs I'd carefully stored in a sealed container. I explained everything. Helen's behavior, the symptoms I'd been experiencing, the poison plot I'd uncovered. Detective Morales, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s, listened intently. She asked sharp, pointed questions, but there was no trace of doubt in her tone. You've done well, Julia, she said after reviewing the materials. This is serious, and we're going to treat it that way. I'll have the food tested for toxins, and we'll issue a warrant to search the house. If what you're saying checks out, Helen and her accomplice won't get away with this. I felt a glimmer of hope. Later that day, I received a call from Detective Morales. You were right, she said. The food tested positive for traces of a controlled substance, one that, in high enough doses, could have been fatal. We're moving forward with the search warrant. Stay put and keep your phone close. We'll update you as soon as we know more. The relief was overwhelming, but it was short-lived. That evening, while I was still at Lila's, Helen called me. Julia, she said, her voice unnervingly calm. I hope you're having a good time with your friend. I just wanted to let you know that I've decided to make some changes around here. Don't worry about coming back tonight. I've taken care of everything. My blood ran cold. What did she mean by taken care of everything? I immediately called Detective Morales to report the call. She's nervous, Morales said. She knows something's wrong, but she doesn't know how much you've uncovered. Stay where you are. We'll handle it. The next day, Morales called with an update. We executed the warrant this morning, she said. We found correspondence with her accomplice, Paul, that corroborates your story, along with evidence of financial tampering in your father's estate. Helen and Paul are both in custody now. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. So it's over? It's over, Morales confirmed. And thanks to your quick thinking, you're safe. I hung up and sank into Lila's couch, the weight of weeks of fear finally lifting. Helen and Paul had tried to destroy me, but they underestimated my resolve. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt free. The day after Helen and Paul's arrest, I sat in Lila's living room, scrolling through news articles that covered the story. Words like poison plot and inheritance scheme flashed on the screen, each one a chilling reminder of how close I'd come to losing everything. My health, my father's legacy, even my life. Look at this, Lila said, holding up her phone. She had found a local news piece featuring a photo of Helen being escorted into the police station, her expression a mix of anger and defeat. It's surreal, I admitted, setting my phone down. I lived with her. I trusted her, even when the cracks started showing. And she betrayed that trust in the worst way, Lila said, her voice firm. But you fought back, Julia. You didn't let her win. I wanted to believe her, but part of me still felt the weight of everything I had lost. Not just my father, but also the illusion of family Helen had created. The woman my dad had loved and trusted had been a stranger all along. Later that afternoon, Detective Morales called with another update. Julia, I thought you'd want to know, she said. Paul has confessed. He admitted to orchestrating the entire scheme, from the poison to the forged financial documents. Helen's role was significant, but he was the one pulling the strings. Does that mean she'll try to shift the blame onto him? I asked. It's possible, Morales said. But with the evidence we've collected, they'll both face serious charges. You'll need to testify during the trial, but I don't see them walking away from this. I thanked her and hung up, feeling a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. Over the next few weeks, I began rebuilding my life. It wasn't easy. Returning to my dad's house felt like stepping into a battlefield, every corner filled with memories of Helen's manipulation. I hired a professional cleaning service to restore the space, removing anything that reminded me of her. The house started to feel like mine again, a place where I could breathe without fear. I also met with my lawyer to finalize the estate's legal matters. Helen and Paul had attempted to siphon funds from my father's accounts, but their paper trail was sloppy. Everything was being restored, and my lawyer assured me that my inheritance was secure. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself thinking less about Helen and Paul and more about what came next. For so long, my life had revolved around surviving their schemes. Now, I had the chance to focus on something new, my future. The day I testified against Helen and Paul, I walked into the courtroom with my head held high. It wasn't easy to face them again, Helen with her icy glare and Paul with his smug indifference, but I refused to let their presence shake me. The prosecutor guided me through my testimony, and I recounted everything: the emails, the footage, the poisoned food. With every word, I felt stronger, like I was reclaiming the power they had tried to steal from me. Helen avoided my gaze, but Paul smirked as I spoke, as though none of this mattered to him. Yet when the prosecutor laid out the evidence, even his confidence began to crumble. When it was over, I stepped out of the courtroom and into the crisp afternoon air. I felt light, as though the weight of their betrayal had finally lifted. Detective Morales approached me, a small smile on her face. "You did well, Julia. They'll be held accountable for what they did." I nodded, letting her words sink in. Justice wasn't just about punishment. It was about closure, about knowing I'd done everything I could to protect myself and honor my father's legacy. As I walked away from the courthouse, I knew I'd never let anyone take advantage of me again. A few weeks after the trial, I stood in my father's study, sunlight streaming through the windows. The room smelled faintly of old books and cedar, a comforting reminder of him. On the desk sat a framed photo of the two of us from my college graduation. I picked it up, running my fingers along the edge of the frame. "I did it, Dad," I whispered. "They're gone. They can't hurt us anymore." The house felt different now, lighter, safer. It wasn't just bricks and mortar anymore. It was mine. I felt at peace. I decided to honor my dad's memory by putting the house to good use. I reached out to local charities, offering to host small fundraisers and events in his name. He had always believed in giving back, and this felt like a way to keep his spirit alive. One evening, as I stood on the back porch watching the sunset, Lila joined me with 2 glasses of wine. "To new beginnings," she said, raising her glass. "To freedom," I replied, clinking mine against hers. As the sky faded into shades of orange and pink, I realized something profound. Helen and Paul had tried to break me, but in the process, they had only made me stronger. My future was mine to build, and I intended to make it count.